This week on Christian World News, 1 year after revival broke out at Asbury University, we go back to learn more of the amazing events during that spiritual awakening and hear what may lie ahead. Plus, the NFL's biggest players in the biggest event of the year, Super Bowl 58. Mahomes, Purdy, and more tell us what's on their mind before the big game. And how Christianity conquered an empire. The emperor's vision that changed the course of history. Hello, everyone. Welcome to this week's edition of Christian World News. I'm George Thomas. It has been a year since the biggest revival in more than 50 years broke out at Kentucky's Asbury University. Although it lasted for just over 2 weeks, its impact was felt far and wide. Now many are asking, will it happen again? Wendy Griffith reports.
The small town of Wilmore, Kentucky had not seen an outpouring of this magnitude in more than 50 years. For 16 days and nights, students and others worshiped and experienced the presence of God. What began as student-led prayer at a scheduled chapel service February 8th led to something extraordinary. Asbury President Dr. Kevin Brown says there's still a feeling of expectancy in the air, even a year later.
Our students continue to be hungry. They continue to lead. They've gone and they've shared. We've had over 50 groups go to different ministries and churches, both in the United States and overseas.
This is Hughes Auditorium here at Asbury, where for more than 2 weeks, the Holy Spirit showed up in such a way that it drew not only students, but people from around the world, hungry for a taste of His glory.
God turned my world technicolor. And I don't know how else to describe it, but prayer came alive. I mean, I saw physical healing, cancer be removed. I saw, like, physically cancer off somebody's neck be removed. I saw emotional healing, relational healing. There were 2 other girls and now my boyfriend. And we spent literally every waking moment. We did not sleep, and we stayed there for 2 weeks.
It was an overwhelming glimpse of just God, you know, like His goodness, His mercy, His grace, His firmness. It was a glimpse of what heaven's going to be like when we get to just reign and dwell with God forever.
Oh my word, yeah. I don't think I'd ever experienced that type of love from God before. Like, I thought 100%, like, this is, like, I've done too many things. I've messed up too many times. Like, I'm too far gone. Like, I thought all of those things, and yet God met me with such grace and compassion.
I knew we were encountering something, but it was like halfway through the weekend when I was like, this is really special.
Pastor in residence Zach Merkreebs was the one preaching that day and admits it took some time to realize the extent of what was happening and says it's still in the air a year later.
The temperature on campus is unbelievable. But what's exciting is they're longing for authentic, long-term steps, not just like 16 days of power. And they're wanting to pursue holiness. They want to be done with porn. They want to be done with addiction to their phones. They want to be done with those kind of things. They want to really have authentic walk with the Lord. And what's amazing is that's happening here.
Another result happened when the original Asbury House, built in 1850, became a prayer room for students.
I think one thing that the outpouring did, it took down a lot of walls that maybe we have about who God is.
What's more, enrollment is up about 25% after 2023 saw the largest incoming freshman class in 25 years.
It was a significant spike in our students, and our enrollment looks strong for the upcoming year as well. So we're really excited about that.
And the revival did the marketing for you.
It really did.
The revival that started here last February didn't stay here at Asbury. What do you think the span is? Can you even measure the span of this revival?
On one hand, yes, we can talk about students went here are the numbers, here's the social media feed. I'm more interested in the long-term influence of what we're seeing with this generation.
Do you think it's going to come back here?
I don't know, but I will say if it does, it won't be because we plan it. It will be because that's what the Lord chooses to do.
Brown says you can't put revival in a bottle.
I think that we would try to recreate it. That's what we do. That's what humans do.
Brown adds that from his perspective, a key generation found itself at the center of revival.
During those 16 days, there was always Gen Z represented at the altar. And the very last day that we had a formal service together, I'll never forget, someone stood in front of all these students, 1,500 Gen Z students in the room, and said, "You will not be the generation defined by depression, anxiety, addiction, and suicidal ideation." And to hear a cry come up from that group, someone said, if we had the spiritual eyes to see it, we would have seen an altar filled with loosened chains. That's my heart. That is the heart of the people around me, that this is a burdened generation, but God wants to use them, and we need to invest in them.
Wendy Griffith, CBN News, Wilmore, Kentucky.
Great story, Wendy. Thank you so much. Up next, players and coaches from the NFL's top teams say they're playing more for the man up top. Step inside the media room at Super Bowl 58 right after this. Welcome back to Christian World News. For players and coaches, playing in the Super Bowl is obviously the pinnacle of their football careers. As the Kansas City Chiefs and San Francisco 49ers made final preparations for this year's big game, stars from both teams shared how they're playing for more than gridiron glory.
I never thought I'd ever be on a stage like this, but here I am, and I need to glorify God for that. I always wonder, why does God have these footballs going through the uprights? Because there's a lot of guys that put a lot of time and effort into their craft of kicking, but for some reason, my balls are going through the uprights, and God's put me on this platform for a reason. And I can't be ashamed to give him all the credit for being here and being alive and everything that he's given for me.
I've just been very grateful in my life. It's been humbling to be able to follow Jesus, and yeah, we're just so grateful to have such an amazing Father that takes care of us every single day, and we can always look to him, when times are good, but also when times are bad.
There was a lot of men who, in our locker room, honestly, that leaned on their faith, and when you go through adversity and tough times, where do you go? You go to the Lord, right? And I think a lot of our guys did that, and here we are.
I've had some really, really dark days in my past where, it was either death, suicide, or talk to God. And like I said, I wouldn't be here today if it wasn't for my faith. And I don't play this game for anything else but the man up top, because this is a game that I love, and he gave me this platform to use to talk about my journey and my walk with him.
I know that you had talked about your faith briefly. Can you again talk about what role it plays in your life and how important your faith is to you?
Yeah, it helps me be the example that I am every single day, and it gives me an example of who to strive to be like. And when stuff is tough or I have adverse times, I can just know that I can lean on my faith to get me through. And I know that the challenges are in front of me for me to get better on the other side, and that's something that I strive for every single day.
Brock, what is your story? What does this season teach you about God's faithfulness?
About God's faithfulness? Man, yeah, I would just say, not trying to hold on too tightly to your life and what you do with your job, and making sure your identity is in Jesus. And honestly, that's been the case for me in my life. I haven't, tried to hold on to the football life. Being a quarterback, it's been about, all right, God, this is what I do, but I am who you say I am. And I've allowed that to sort of, take over my life, and he's taken me where he needs me. And so now here we are.
I wake up, I pray, I thank him. Before I even go out there on the field, I thank him. And even in pre-games, that's just something that I naturally do that, without him, none of this is even possible.
Football is fleeting. It is very important. It's changed my life. It's been so amazing, but the foundation of my life is my faith. And, that allows me to put things into perspective.
I throw a lot on God and just let him go to work and control what I can control. But I feel like at times in life, you know, we try to muscle things or control things and feel like we really have a say-so, and that's not the case. And so you have to rely on your faith to be able to maneuver through life.
My faith's the most important thing in my life. It's the thing that keeps me grounded. You know, I think the moment I started to really, you know, enjoy my life more than I ever have was when I surrendered to God. And to me, it's the thing that will always be consistent for me, no matter what happens in my life, good or bad. And I'm blessed for that.
It's something about just the faith in Jesus, man, and the miracles he can work in your life. All you got to do is believe, man. And I walk around in my backpack, I have like 3 little mustard seeds. Yeah, faith of a mustard seed, as you know. And I walk around with those, man, as a testament, man, because, like, you know, being a believer, it's the most important thing to me.
Just because we're in the NFL doesn't mean we're special. We're broken, and I'm broken, and the only way that I'll be able to enter those pearly gates is by the blood of Jesus, you know. And so the only way everyone can do that is by his blood. So that's why I always have my faith and my hope in him.
Up next, how Christianity conquered an empire. Learn about the emperor whose holy vision changed the course of history. Welcome back to Christian World News. Rome is honoring its most historic figures, the emperor who embraced Christianity, enabling its spread throughout the empire. A 42-foot statue of Constantine is on display in a garden of the Capitoline Museums. It's a replica, of course, of a statue the emperor commissioned in 312 AD, reconstructed by using 3D modeling from some of the original pieces. History records Constantine prayed for victory in battle and had a vision of a cross with the words, "In this sign, conquer." Constantine's vision changed the course of history. Christianity, as you know, began with a small group of Jewish believers in a remote corner of the Roman Empire. Well, 300 years later, it became the official religion of Rome. So, how did Christianity conquer the empire? Here's the story of Constantine the Great.
Once the greatest power on earth, Rome in the 4th century was on the brink of collapse.
Well, put it this way, 20 out of the 22 emperors were assassinated. So it was a terrible topsy-turvy time.
2 co-emperors fought for control, Constantine in Great Britain and Maxentius in Rome. The empire was ravaged by war, poverty, and the persecution of Christians, the bloodiest in history.
When Christians are under duress, they certainly stand up for the faith magnificently with God's help. And the result is quite dramatic.
And Christians in Rome were about to find a champion in Constantine.
There is no question, but he felt, believe it or not, called by God to Christianize the Roman Empire.
Constantine decided the time had come to overthrow Maxentius, the man he called a pagan and a tyrant. The year was 312.
Maxentius is probably the incarnation of everything evil. He was a terrible, terrible emperor. He consulted witches and wizards regularly. He liked to augur the future by various foul means. One included, this is hard to believe, ripping open the bellies of pregnant women and checking out the fetuses' livers for clues as to tomorrow. Horrible things.
Constantine's army battled through Europe, defeating the forces of Maxentius. On October 27th, they were poised to invade the city of Rome. Constantine camped here, 9 miles north of Rome. His army was outnumbered 4-1. So he prayed to God for help. And here in this field, he had a vision that changed the course of history. Around noon, Constantine looked up at the sky and saw a sign above the sun. The symbol was a cross formed by the Greek letters chi and rho, the first two letters in the name of Christ. Above the sign were the words, "Conquer by this." That night, the strange sign appeared again. Constantine said that in his sleep, the Christ of God appeared to him and instructed him to use the sign as a standard in battle. The next morning, Constantine ordered his soldiers to mark the symbol on their shields, and under the sign of the cross, they headed for Rome. On the other side of the Tiber River, Maxentius sent his troops to meet Constantine, while he stayed behind in Rome.
October 28th marked the 6th anniversary of the reign of Maxentius. To celebrate, he held a day of public games here at the Circus Maximus. But instead of cheering, the crowds turned on him.
They shouted, "Constantine cannot be overcome." So Maxentius fled to the temple of Apollo. There he searched a collection of pagan prophecies, known as the Sibylline books, and found a passage that mentioned the date, October 28th. On the same day, the enemy of the Romans should perish. Maxentius thought it prophesied the death of Constantine, so he changed his mind and went to join his troops. But by now, his army was trapped between Constantine and the Tiber River.
The only way back into Rome was across the Milvian Bridge, and here Maxentius fell headfirst into the trap he had set for Constantine.
Maxentius had cut all the bridges into Rome, but at the Milvian, he had built a temporary wooden bridge designed to collapse under the weight of Constantine's army.
Instead, most of his own soldiers were trapped on the bridge. When it collapsed, many of them drowned, and the rest were taken prisoner.
Maxentius himself drowned after jumping into the river. And the next day, Constantine's army entered Rome, parading his head on the point of a spear.
Today, Constantine is known as the first Christian emperor. But was it a real conversion, or just a smart political move?
There may have been political benefits for Constantine to do that. I've never understood why he must be only a totally sincere Christian convert or only a calculating politician. There could have been a little of both involved.
As emperor, Constantine remained the head of Rome's pagan priesthood, and his coins bore the image of the Roman sun god, Sol Invictus. He also declared a national day of rest on the Roman day of the sun.
There's no question that Constantine was somewhat of a mixed Christian when it came to controlling the empire. He said, look, we're in a transition period. Please understand that I am emperor of all of the Romans, including the pagan Romans, so give me a little time and we'll phase these out. And he did.
The true extent of Constantine's conversion is debatable, but his influence on Christianity is undeniable.
Within a year, he and his co-emperor issued an edict of toleration. They granted permission for all religions to worship freely and ordered the return of property seized from persecuted Christians.
This was a dramatic move. When Constantine was converted, it was at a time when only 10% of the Roman Empire was Christian. At the end of the 300s, 95% of Rome was Christian.
Less than 400 years after the death of Christ, his followers had become the most influential religious group in Rome. And with this sign, Christianity had conquered the Roman Empire.
Thank you, Gordon. You can find more great stories like this at our website, cbnnews.com. We'll be back right after this. Finally this week, the latest episodes of The Chosen hit big at the box office. The highly anticipated fourth season had a strong opening in theaters. The first 3 episodes pulled in just under $6 million in its first weekend. Including the Thursday night premiere, it topped $7 million. The rest of Season 4 will be in theaters throughout February. Find out where you can see them at cbnnews.com. Well, The Chosen explores the struggles of Christ's followers in the first century. Today, many of us go through the same things. If that's you, here's a message of encouragement from the cast members of The Chosen.
If you ever have to make a decision between doing what scares you and stepping out on faith, always step out on faith, because that's where the beauty lies. And as soon as you do that, it's out of your hands. It's all above you now, and your steps will be guided. So step out on faith.
We're really bad at giving ourselves permission to be in process. And the Lord wants us to learn how to give ourselves permission to be in process. He gives us permission to be in process. And that means we're going to have good days, and that means we're going to have bad days. That means we're going to have days where we don't feel victorious at all and we feel like we're failing. And the Lord is right there with us, joining us in the midst of it, showing us the way through to full transformation and victory.
Just because you're different doesn't mean you're broken. And sometimes a thing that you perceive as a flaw can end up being your greatest asset.
I've been where you are. I've been lost and hopeless. And I promise that if you just seek the Lord, no matter what you've done or your past or how far you feel from your faith or from God, He will be there for you. And just open your heart and your soul.
No one's perfect, and that's okay. My character, Quintus, isn't necessarily a nice man. But he is a small part in a story that's much bigger that he doesn't fully understand. And I think sometimes all of us, small part of a bigger story that we don't fully understand.
Spread love, spread kindness. You know, it's really tough going through things alone, but together we can get through anything.
Definitely encouraging words. Folks, thank you so much for joining us this week. Until next week, goodbye and God bless you.